Believe me guys, 80% of the time, the students that I work with sabotage themselves in that way. That's why I call this the lo-fi method. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Resh, I'm a polyglot, and on this channel, I make videos about various languages and also sort of vlogs. The question that I get the most in all of its variations is, what is the most efficient way to learn a language? And that question will be answered in today's video. You know what? I know how hard it is to learn and acquire a second language, especially if you have no idea where to start, how to continue, how to improve, or even how to maintain your level. And that has so many reasons. Like, I grew up with 3 languages. That's why I didn't have the feeling that I had to learn a second or third language even, because I kind of grew up with the languages. So my personality was already divided into 3, so I'm kind of schizophrenic probably. No, all jokes aside, when I had French and later Spanish in school, I really realized what it is like to learn a language from zero and try to get to a point and try to understand people who actually speak in that language. Over the past 10 years, I've been teaching English, German, and Turkish, so I've kind of realized what the best method would be to actually approach a language and make somebody acquire a second language. And that's why I'm going to be talking about the lo-fi method in today's video, which is, to me, the best actual way to approach a second language. You can adapt the lo-fi method for any language, no matter which language we're talking about. First of all, researchers on second language acquisition all share the same opinion that the main pillars of learning and acquiring a second language are immersion and practice. Now, practice might be a little obvious, but what actually is immersion? Immersion means that you are fully surrounded by your target language. Let's say your target language would be English. That will mean that everything around you has to be in English. The songs you listen to, the newspaper you're reading, the signs that you look at, the show that you're watching, your phone settings, basically everything around you has to be in English. That's what immersion is about. And the second thing that I just mentioned is practice. And you can't just avoid practicing. Some people really believe that you can listen and understand the grammar, but then never speak and then act like you know the language. Well, what are you learning the language for if you're not going to practice? And I see a lot of people who know the structures and the grammar of a language, but are not really able to speak because they never practice. And that's where italki comes into play. Italki is an online language learning platform where you can have one-to-one lessons with certified teachers with proven experience in over 150 different languages. With teachers from all around the world, you can not only learn and acquire a language, but you can also learn about different cultures and different accents. It is like a tailor-made language learning experience because you determine your own study pace. You pay per lesson, so there's no subscription or other kind of commitment. You can have a one-to-one lesson wherever you want, whenever you want. There's always a teacher for you. You can even practice for free with the italki community. And now there's actually a language challenge. Register on italki for free now because italki is offering various awards with the 2022 First Language Challenge. Explore italki for free. Grab the chance to win various coupons and up to $500 credits to level up your new year language learning. Click the link in the description box and get started right away. Now, we basically mentioned our 2 musts for second language acquisition, which are immersion and practice. And of course, for the part of immersion, the best way to immerse yourself in a language would be to move to a country where the target language is actually spoken. That way, you wouldn't have a chance to escape the language even if you wanted to. But now let's be honest, especially nowadays with the corona restrictions and everything, it can be hard to just move to another country or even travel to another country, right? So what we have to talk about here is self-immersion, because our main goal is to actually start thinking in our target language. I know it's not easy, especially in the beginning when we always tend to translate from one language to another, but we have to actually start thinking in that language in order to not sound weird because we try to translate something into another language, right? And you might ask, why can't I just translate? Because sometimes you will have a good translation, but sometimes the thing you're trying to say doesn't exist in that language because it might be a saying that's only used in that specific language culture. And also, translating in your head is a big effort and it takes time. time. And imagine a conversation like that where you keep translating in your head. That would just be super awful, I guess. So how can I immerse myself if I don't have the opportunity to go abroad? I can do so many things, actually. Let's say if I were to learn Spanish, everything, and I literally mean everything that can be in Spanish should be in Spanish. My phone settings, the music that I listen to, the podcasts that I listen to, the videos that I watch on TikTok or on Instagram, I can make sure that I follow a Spanish or Latin American influencers. I can start watching a Spanish TV series, TV shows. I can watch Spanish films. Almost all of us have Netflix access. Everybody knows someone who actually has access. So yeah, Netflix, man, just use it. Watch La Casa de Papel, for instance, if you want to improve your Spanish. Read books in Spanish. Do whatever you can. Make sure that you hear it and see it all the goddamn time. That's the first thing that you have to do. Again, make sure that each and every day, in virtually any situation, you hear and see your target language, even if you don't want to, even if you don't feel like learning now, even if you don't feel like looking at it, just make sure that even subconsciously, your brain keeps getting that information somehow, okay? Because we don't always learn actively, we also learn passively, right? And now about our method, the lo-fi method. When I say lo-fi, I'm talking about low filters. And what am I trying to say with that? Now, we said that the second pillar is definitely practice. And especially in terms of practice, I see so many people sabotaging themselves. Because in terms of practice, we have to be aware of our effective filters. Now, what is that? We just talked about things that we must do when we talked about immersion. And now we're going to talk about things that we must not do when we're talking about practice, okay? Now, as human beings, we have effective filters in our brains, which can, from time to time, sabotage us when we try to practice a language, when we actually try to speak a language. Sometimes people get too anxious when they try to speak a second language, when they try to say things they're not really familiar with, when you're not really 100% certain of what you're about to say and about the correctness of the grammar and about the way you will sound, you tend to speak slowly or not even speak at all, talking about sabotaging yourself. And I remember doing that when I was learning French because I'm such a perfectionist and I always wanted to sound like impeccable. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I didn't want to sound stupid. I didn't want to pronounce anything wrong. I didn't want to use the grammar poorly. And all of these thoughts just made me feel uncomfortable, which basically blocked my mind. Like I couldn't think properly just because of that. And I couldn't actually start speaking because I wanted to be like the best, you know, I wanted to sound very good. And in case I don't sound very good, I just thought, okay, you better don't speak because you don't want anybody to make fun of you. You don't want anybody to look at you like, oh, that guy, his French is not so good. You know, I didn't want to have any negative comments. That's actually an awful way of thinking because when we think about the natural way of learning a language, what actually babies do, no baby comes out of the womb and starts speaking like a professor, right? They start with syllables, then move on with words, and then form sentences, and then mostly they're wrong, and they get corrected, and they hear and hear and hear, immersion, and eventually they start speaking properly. And that's basically what we have to do when we learn a second language. Listen, try to speak somehow, no matter if it's correct, no matter if you pronounce it wrong. I mean, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about any of those, but that definitely means that you shouldn't care too much. Because as long as you think too much about all of those things, your effective filters will be up. And we don't want that because that way you will have a mental block. And believe me, guys, 80% minimum, 80% of the time, the students that I work with sabotage themselves in that way. And that's why I think it is so important to keep those filters as low as possible. That's why I call this the lo-fi method. As long as the filters are up, we find ourselves on a long road full of obstacles trying to find the right lane. Now remember, the reason the filters are up are low motivation, no self-confidence, a bad self-image, anxiety, and introversion. Now we have to actually reverse all of that. Approach the practicing part with high motivation, self-confidence, a low level of anxiety, extroversion, and a good self-image. Don't care too much about other people's opinions. Don't care too much about how you're going to sound. Don't think you're going to sound stupid. Don't overthink the grammar grammar part, because the more you speak, the more you will get used to it. And let me get this straight. As a perfectionist myself, I'm not trying to say that speaking flawless, that trying to speak flawless is not a reasonable goal. Of course it is, as long as it doesn't prevent us from moving on and improving ourselves. But for the most part, and especially for beginners and intermediates, it does. So keep in mind, lo-fi is the key, because immersion itself is definitely not enough. And I'm going to give you real life examples, okay? Now, the ones who follow me for a long time know that I was born and raised in Germany. And when I was 4 years old, my stepdad came to Germany from Turkey, because I was living in Germany at that time. It was the year 1999, and I remember it clearly. My stepdad was, I think, 18 or 19, and he didn't speak any German when he came over, right? So being in Germany means for him, for the target language, German, full immersion, because he's in Germany. But as I said, immersion on itself is not enough. And now, after 23 years of living in Germany, he still doesn't speak it. He understands it to a certain extent, but he doesn't speak it. So here you can clearly see that immersion on its own is never going to be enough. It's very important, but it's only half of the job. But on the other hand, there's my cousin's husband who went to Germany in the year 2014 and became fluent in German in only 2 years. And German is not that easy, to be honest, because of the articles and, Daddy Das and everything. But he mastered it, and he became so fluent and has just an amazing accent that you would just say, hey man, how did you actually do that? That you would definitely say, man, you did that in 2 years? That's crazy. And in the case of my stepdad, when I talked to him and asked him why he never actually tried to speak, was that he said, I do understand most of the things that I hear and I can respond somehow, but I kind of didn't feel comfortable, speaking, because it felt weird. The pronunciation of German is not that easy and I didn't want to make any mistakes. That made him actually sabotage himself and not learn the language, right? So I cannot tell you how many people I've met like him in the past few years, because as I said, I've been teaching for a long time, and I think that is the most problematic thing, that people actually sabotage themselves. And do me a favor, just think over it and try to implement those rules that I just talked about. Those are just small things that you have to change about your mindset. But if you actually implement this method, it will have an immense impact on your second language acquisition. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you liked it. If so, make sure to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. I see you guys in another language learning video, but till then, take care.